So now we have Helena, Siipi and Susanne Uusitalo, though only Helena here, I suppose, talking about research ethics for applied ethics.
Yes, let's get Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Helena Siipi from the University of Turku, and this is a presentation by me and Susanne Uusitalo. Susanne, unfortunately, could not be here today, so I'm presenting it. And as the title says, we are going to talk about research ethics for applied ethics. So the basic idea of the presentation is to take the most fundamental question of ethics, what should we do, and apply it to applied ethics. I will move that one a bit so we can see. No. Oh dear. Well. Yeah, I was just trying to move the figure, but yeah. Yeah, the basic question of ethics and apply it to applied ethics. How should we do applied ethics? And interestingly, there seems to be a lack of earlier studies. As Hansson says, ethicists have made crucial contributions to development of discourses on ethics and focusing on a sizable number of professions and other human activities. However, we still lack such a discussion in many areas where it is needed. One of these areas is ethics itself. And then he goes on the second quote and says it actually concerns not just ethics, but also philosophy. And Beauchamp kind of thinks the same and goes on to say that it's shameful that moralists pay less attention to their own morals than to the moral conduct of others. As you can see, the quotes are quite old, but it seems to be a situation still today. Not much discussion on this. So we wanted to start the discussion on the topic. The starting point or the viewpoint is that we very roughly divide the research ethical questions in the three questions: choice of the topic, what to study, research integrity, how to study, and then use and misuse of the results. So what to do with the results and how to present them. In this talk, we are going to discuss the second one mostly, how the question about research integrity, because this is a conference about method, it seems natural to concentrate on that. And in the discussion, we are following the Finnish research integrity guidelines, which apply to all fields of research in Finland. And in these guidelines, the question of integrity is based on 4 principles. They are reliability, honesty, respect, and accountability. And in this talk, we are concentrating on the first 2, so on the reliability and honesty. So, when you are talking about research integrity, and especially the first 2, on individual level, the 4 principles of research integrity very much come down to researchers' ability to be impartial and independent, that is, not to let undue influences to affect or any conflicts of interest to kind of affect the results or the outcome of the research. And it seems to us that integrity in applied ethics actually is really important because, of course, the applied ethics concerns issues that matter to people. It's about life and death. I mean, we are doing research on euthanasia, abortion, as was mentioned, war, and about issues that make great difference to the people's lives, like healthcare, education, nutrition, technology, and so on. And it also goes when researchers on applied ethics start to do research on something, it's kind of a sign that this is important. This is something that matters. So it's not just what's the outcome of the research, but also the chosen topics influence the kind of society and ethical discussions, which issues are seen as central and important. And of course, every time we make a funding application, for example, we are saying that this research is really important to find out questions on these interesting and important topics. However, at the same time, both of us, Susanne and me, we have been doing applied ethics for some time. It seems that the personal beliefs influence what we are saying, or what ethicists are saying. Ethicists, just like other people, we have worldviews and personal values, we have self-interests, and we do research on topics that we find interesting. For example, I'm doing research on environmental ethics. Whenever I go to an environmental ethics conference and in the coffee hours discussing what people are doing, they're all mountain bikers and hikers, and they spend all their free time they're kind of natural lover peoples. And in similar lines, if you look at the research on sexual minorities and their rights, the people who belong to sexual minorities, they tend to be overrepresented. And it's natural, that's of course. And it's also happening in other disciplines. I mean, if you look at the people in veterinary science, they like animals, and computer science people, they like computers. Of course it's like that, and it's nothing wrong in there. But at the same time, it's kind of develops the question on how to be kind of, how to contain the research integrity. Tuija Takala already at 2005 was a bit skeptical on the issue. She says that our very basic beliefs, whether we are liberal, conservative, religious or secular, and so on, shape our normative views much more than our academic qualifications. Whenever we speak as experts of ethics about normative questions, our normative beliefs shape the answers we give. It is very difficult to imagine a truly impartial position to any ethical questions. And moreover, again, Tom Beauchamp says, persons who have conflicts typically do not see it as a conflict. So there might be something there. And we think that there might be something in ethics that make these questions even more serious than in other disciplines. First of all, of course, the normative nature of ethics. People in computer science, they are kind of doing the computer stuff, but in normative, ethics is kind of normative in nature. We are taking stand on normative questions, or at least studying the arguments for normative views. And in the very beginning of our philosophical studies, we have all learned that the kind of idea of philosophy is to question and challenge. So there is this element around there. And if you look at the ethics journals, they very often publish kind of provocative papers. It's a kind of merit to kind of argue for something really strange, maybe not strange, but something kind of, we should start enhancing human race or anything like that. At the same time, there's scarcity of resources, so there's a lot of competition, and there are possible biases. Philosophers are certain kind of people. We all know that. And it's not only who we are, but also the journals, what gets published. So all these may kind of make it even more difficult to do the research in kind of impartial way. There are certain means of making personal beliefs more transparent. There might be disclosures of conflicts of interests, maybe subjectivity statements. We could make use of them. They might be helpful, but we are a bit uncertain whether they are sufficient. Moreover, if we take this kind of difficulty, or maybe not the difficulty, but the kind of the personal views are somewhere out, they kind of around the choice of the topics and what we want to do in ethics. At the same time, it seems to us that pre-selected results, or at least pre-selected conclusions, are not uncommon in philosophy. in many cases, there seems to be good reasons to believe that conclusions are predetermined by personal cultural values, worldviews, or even stakeholder interests. This is not usually seen problem in philosophy. We tend to think that a good argument is a good argument and a bad argument is a bad argument, regardless who presents it and regardless why someone presents it. But at the same time, there was this scarcity of resources and great amount of competition. By pre-selected conclusions, we don't mean hypotheses. They are different. Hypothesis is something that can turn out to be accepted or rejected by the research process. The research process determines which one takes place. Whereas pre-selected conclusions, by pre-selected conclusions, we understand something that they are something that the researcher tries to justify. So Hansson again kind of spells out this difference as it reads here. When we say that a judge uses a legal rule, we usually mean that she employs it as a means to determine what is the right decision. Judges often use rules only after they have made their minds to justify a decision that has already been made. And he goes on, could it be that bioethicists apply ethical theories, but only as instruments for justification, not as decision guides? I don't think it's always the case, but sometimes it may be the case. Of course, again, if you look at the other disciplines, philosophy is not unique in allowing researchers to search for arguments for certain kind of views. Of course, medical companies are certainly hoping for certain kind of results. And if somebody does research on ways to diminish violent crimes, of course they are hoping for certain kind of results. But still, we see the case seems to be a bit different. It kind of, in these other disciplines, there are certain criteria and it's very strict. Whereas in philosophy, it seems that you're kind of free to pick any kind of ethical view and try to justify it. And it also seems that these pre-selected conclusions, they are not only tolerated, but sometimes they are even valued and expected. I have a friend who works in ecology. Sometimes she uses one method and then she might study the same phenomena by other method. If the results kind of are contrary, it's not a big deal. It's science. But in philosophy, if I present an argument against in vitro meat and other one against it, I might be claimed of being inconsistent. So it might sometimes even be that we are kind of expected to kind of select our views. It's not something that comes out of the research, but something that we are expected to take a stand on from the beginning. And finally, if we put these two things together, that people have these personal views and that the pre-selected conclusions are accepted, the outcome can be quite worrying, I think. So this is a quote from Clock. As you can see, it's a quite old one too. We do not take a stand on whether Clock's analysis of this particular book is appropriate. We haven't read the book. And we do not want to take a stand whether animal ethics is a good case of this. But still, you can see what he writes. And what is important here is this kind of the underlined part. Sometimes a neutral approach to the problems and to toleration of competing positions amounts to nothing else than even betraying one's own values. So again, it's kind of even expected that there are certain kind of views supported. So, yes, thank you. So we don't, we are in the very beginning of doing this research. So we are kind of as you can see, I'm more like pointing out the problems than finding solutions. But at least there is something we could present as a solution. So we think that philosophers, people doing applied ethics, they should refrain from presenting their conclusions as a result. That would be crazy. I mean, if they start from the pre-selected conclusion, then they find a justification it, and then present it as a conclusion what they knew from the beginning. That doesn't make sense. So we think that the argument is what they should present as a result, not only to other philosophers, but also in the public discussion, and they should be careful about that. So, but the main conclusion is that we feel that at the moment there is a very much need for the research ethics for applied ethics, and it comes down to all these issues listed around here. So the possible biases, the goal of questioning and challenging, societal importance of the issues we are discussing, the philosophical interest is there too. We could also make a kind of ask, what should we study? Should we study what is philosophically interesting? Or should we study what is societally important? Sometimes they are the same thing, but they might be different things. And what are the criteria for these two? The personal beliefs might have some influence, so we need to be careful. The pre-selected conclusions should be more careful regarding them. And then the problem that there might be same-minded people working together. So, as I said, I have been more like presenting problems, not so many solutions yet. It would be really interesting if you have some solutions, or if you think that we are overreacting, that there is nothing to worry about. That would be really interesting to hear too. So thank you for listening.
Okay, our first question.
Yeah. Thank you for the talk. Oops. I lost the anti-wind. Okay. I am very sympathetic to the whole approach and aim of this line of inquiry. And indeed, myself, when I write philosophical papers, I try to structure them as much as I can as a social science paper would be structured. You know, so with an hypothesis, which is clearly declared as an hypothesis, and then method section, discussion of the application, whatever, and then conclusions. So I'm sympathetic, and I think it's very important to, follow a structuring of this sort to give proper direction to the argument. But when it comes to your last question, I think I'm a bit more to the side of you might be overreacting a bit to this. And the reason why I think that is, on the one hand, it's true that one's philosophical beliefs and position are kind of supposed to hang together as conspirators, maybe, as Bernard Williams put it once. But on the other hand, it's quite common in philosophy to have philosophers changing their minds. Putnam, for example, changed his mind 1,000 times during his career. And, nobody had anything to, recriminate about it. And even more recently, like Hanno Sauer from University of Utrecht published 2 papers on inquiry. One in which he was arguing that the history of philosophy is fundamental for studying philosophy, systematic philosophy, and another one arguing exactly the opposite point. Indeed, there was a bit of polemic about this, editorially speaking, but I mean, nothing serious seems to be at stake here. So that would be my challenge,
Yeah, of course we are not claiming that everybody is, and no one never changes their mind, or everybody is going for the kind of pre-selected conclusion. At the same time, I feel that Putnam, for example, is quite famous because he changed his mind, and it kind of tells something about the expectations. He's a kind of example of the one who changed, and everybody knows that he changed it. So it kind of tells about what is expected.
Okay, we have 2 more questions and only 4 minutes, so please keep it.
Yeah, thanks. What this reminds me is a little bit, or I feel that I recognize what's going on here from metaphysics and let's say philosophy of time, where it seems that people have chosen their views that they, but I've seen it a little bit maybe like in courtrooms where you have, right, there is the defense and there's the, and they're trying to prove to each other something. It rarely works, and maybe I think you're pointing to some of the reasons why, in a way, there seems to be this incommensurability. Yeah. And one of you have that same-minded people working together. I'm wondering if there could be some, let's say, solution to be had of trying to find the people from the other paradigm, so to speak, and try to get the conversation going. Yeah. I'm not sure it works, but that could be one way of at least trying to resolve but that involves recognizing that we have chosen a position and that we need to try to convince ourselves or something like that. Or
it's kind of related to. I think this is this same-minded people working together. But also, if you look at the philosophers, so we kind of tend to be white middle-aged men. Sorry about that, but that's the case. And of course, it's not only that. We are all quite educated, and scarcity of resources. It comes down to either we are people who have kind of financial security to do research, or we are risk takers. Yeah. So it there may be a lot of different issues going on, not just the gender and race, but so it might make the group kind of same-minded in the sense. But we definitely need to look for the solutions. And of course, obvious solution would be to involve different kind and listen different kind of voices and different kind of approaches to philosophy, as was suggested in the first presentation.
Okay, we have time for 1 more question, please.
Okay, I'll make it quick and short, I promise. So what I want to say is, by the way, I'm coming from the field of politics and international relations, but this is very insightful, and I could say that it's very validating to my research because I'm researching on feminist politics. And politics and IR is coming from the tradition that, science should be science, like in a positivist sense, that it's anchored in the natural sciences, like methods. But there's still an ongoing debate when it comes to, like, can you actually separate the researcher from the research itself? So like me, I'm researching feminist politics, and there's been this reflexivity movement in the 1980s when the post-positivist movement in the IR emerged. It says there that it's okay to not separate yourself from the research, and it's okay to have your personal biases because you're basically researching something that most likely you have an attachment to. That's why you chose to research something in the first place. So I think the reflexivity and ethics in our tradition also coming from the philosophical foundations in the international ethics, so-called international ethics, like subdiscipline. And I think, for me, what's your opinion on the other social sciences that has this? It still has its hesitation towards accepting, the value or the possibly the possible place of these biases and ethics in terms of social science research.
Yeah, and I also think it's, as you said, it's all right to do something that is important to you, and but the thing is how to make it visible, and it's not so often done in philosophy. And also it comes down to the research integrity, how to make it visible in an honest way. So you need to be honest in the way of research integrity to really describe who you are. And also I think there is a problem in philosophy that we are kind of thinking that we are in a kind of million discourse in which the truth will come out at some point when we allow all kind of views. But in reality, not everybody is able to present the views. But making it explicit, as you say, it's really important. It also makes it explicit who has the voice.
All right, let's thank our speaker.